Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the July 2026 meeting of the Community Advisory Council. My name is Sean Rourke, and I'm the manager of the Communications and Engagement Group at the Boston Region MPO. Before we get started, I want to acknowledge that this has been a difficult time for those in the transportation planning and advocacy communities in the Boston region, with the death of City of Boston transportation planner and longtime advocate Louisa Gagg. People in these spaces who knew Louisa are processing their grief in different ways. And as we all know, there isn't one right way to grieve or honor the memory of a friend, a colleague, or a professional peer. We support everyone, including advisory council members and others on this call, in doing what works for you. We debated whether to continue with today's meeting and ultimately decided that it felt right for us to continue, but in a way that explicitly acknowledges um, and gives everyone permission to take care of their needs in a way that works for them. So as we start the meeting, we'll be glad to have all of you participate in whatever ways work for you. With that being said, we are going to start the formal meeting content, and I will ask Gia to introduce herself and take us through the meeting notices and the roll call.
Thank you, Sean, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gia Hong, and I am a planner for public engagement at the Boston Region MPO. Thank you for joining us for our July meeting, and I will walk us through a few notices. Next slide, please. First, I will read our notice of non-discrimination. You are invited to participate in our transportation planning process regardless of your race, color, national origin, including limited English proficiency, religion, creed, gender, ancestry, ethnicity, disability, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, veteran status, or background. You can read the full notice of your rights and protections at www.bostonmpo.org/mpo_non_discrimination. Next slide, please. Our accessibility statement reads, this meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Zoom products are compliant with exceptions with the following standards: Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.2, Level AA standards, and revised Section 508 standards. If you require any additional accommodations in order to participate fully in this meeting, or if you have any technical difficulties, please contact me, Gia Hong, MPO staff at jhuang@ctps.org or at 857-702-3654 or via the chat box. Next slide, please. Next, I will read our guidelines. All participants will join the meeting with muted microphones. Please rename yourself to include your first name, last name, and affiliation. Participants may mute and unmute themselves. Always remain muted unless actively speaking. And to participate in this discussion, please select the raise hand function. You can find this by clicking either on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and a window will pop up with a raise hand button at the bottom, or using the reactions button in the toolbar. The facilitator will then call on participants. Please raise your hand via Zoom if you would like to use an AI note taker during this meeting. And if you are on the phone, you can use the *9 button to raise your hand. Next slide, please. With that, I will take us through our roll call. 495 Metro West Partnership.
Good afternoon, Jason Palich here for the 495 Metro West Partnership.
Hello, Jason. A Better City. Abundant Housing, Massachusetts.
This is Jesse Kansenbedanov. I'm here.
Good afternoon. Bike to the Sea.
Hi, Pat Bibbins, board president of Bike to the Sea.
See you. City of Chelsea. Codman Square Neighborhood Development Corporation. Conservation Law Foundation.
Seth Gadbois, Conservation Law Foundation, sitting in for Paulina Muratori here today.
Good afternoon. Livable Streets Alliance. Massachusetts Healthy Aging Collaborative. Mass Bike.
Hi, this is Galen Mook with MathBike and also Alexis Hosea Abbott's here.
Good afternoon, both. Mystic River Watershed Association,
Hi, Carl Alexander here for Myra.
Mystic Valley Elder Services,
Meg Van Lossitzer from Mystic Valley.
Prevention Research Center,
Angie Craddock here, Prevention Research Center.
Transportation for Massachusetts,
Hi, Pete Wilson from T for Mass.
hello. Town Green,
Maureen Aylward here for Town Green.
Town of Natick,
Morgan Griffiths here for Town of Natick.
good afternoon. Transit Matters,
Caitlin Allen Conley for Transit Matters.
Watertown TMA,
Sophia Gallimore, Watertown TMA.
good afternoon. Okay, that wraps up the roll call. I will pass it back to Sean.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you, Gia. No, it was I had trouble finding the unmute button. Okay, now I believe I am passing it to Michaela to continue the rest of the agenda.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So up next, we have our chair's report from Caitlin. So I'll pass it off to Caitlin to share the chair's report.
Thank you, and thank you, Sean, for starting the meeting by acknowledging the truly tragic loss of Louisa. I think we're all heartbroken by her passing. I wanted to take this report just to sort of level set and acknowledge that this council's mission is to create a space for knowledge building and productive discussions and about regional transportation issues, and to advise this MPO staff and the board to ensure that regional programs and projects are truly responsive to public priorities, and safety is the ultimate public priority. So I hope that we can honor Louisa today and going forward and her legacy by upholding this mission. And we can all come to this group and to the work that we do with a renewed focus and an absolute commitment to creating safer streets for all and implementing Vision Zero. If you all would join me, I would like to take time to hold a moment of silence to honor Louisa. But I would also just like to say that the ultimate tribute to her memory can't be words or silence alone, but really must be, immediate and unyielding action to fully fund street safety projects and to continue doing the hard work and the good work that we do and the work that she can no longer carry forward. So if folks would join me in a moment of silence, I would appreciate it. And I guess we could do that now. I'll set my timer. Thank you. I know Louisa would want us to continue doing the work that we're doing, and the staff has really prepared a very thoughtful discussion for today. And as Sean said, we want to honor how everyone is feeling and what you're bringing to this space today. But I think in her honor, we should move forward and continue with the conversation at looking at reflecting on the past year's work that we've done together as a body, and to think about what comes ahead. And I just want to thank the staff and all of you in advance for being here, for continuing the conversation, and for your candid and constructive contributions over the last year, and hopefully in this meeting today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Caitlin. All right, at this point, it is time for public comments before we move into the larger discussion pieces that Caitlin mentioned. So if there are any members of the public who would make a comment, please go ahead and raise your hand and I will call on you if so. All right, seeing and hearing no comments and seeing no hands, we're going to go ahead and move into reviewing our meeting minutes from June. Are there any questions or comments about the June meeting minutes? Seeing and hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the June meeting minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Can I get a second?
A second.
Thank
If
you,
I'm allowed.
Caitlin. Thank you, Caitlin. All right, and I'm going to pass it to Gia to call the roll on the meeting minutes review.
That's good. 495 Metro West Partnership,
Aye.
Abundant Housing Massachusetts,
Aye.
Bike to the Sea,
Aye.
Conservation Law Foundation,
Aye.
Mass Bike,
Aye.
Mystic River Watershed Association,
Aye.
Mystic Valley Elder Services,
Aye.
Prevention Research Center,
I abstain.
Transportation for Massachusetts,
Aye.
Town Green,
Aye.
Town of Natick,
Aye.
Transit Matters,
Aye.
and Watertown TMA.
Aye.
Okay, that wraps up the roll call. I'll pass it back to Michaela.
Thank you, Gia. And so the meeting minutes from June are approved, and we're now going to move into our main content for today. And to get us started on our reflection and discussion, I want to first pass it off to Tegan to offer some opening remarks. And we're going to actually pause the screen share at this point, and we'll bring it back when we get into later in the meeting. We're going to talk a little bit about what's coming next over the next few months, but we can go ahead and pause the slides for now, and I'll pass that off to Tegan to offer some opening remarks before we get into discussion.
Hi, thank you, Michaela. And it's really wonderful to be here meeting with you all and seeing you again. I have attended a number of your meetings, and I've really appreciated seeing your evolving discussions and engagement in the MPO process. But also to continue the sentiments, to honor and recognize the context in which we are entering this conversation. I'd also like to offer my deep sympathy to the friends and colleagues of Louisa Gag here. I did not have the pleasure myself individually of knowing her the way many of you did, as I've been told that she was an incredibly kind, supportive person, colleague, friend, and also very passionate about working to make the city a better place and a safer place. So just kind of in that context, I know that we, our board, and many of you commit to Vision Zero work because every death on our roads is tragic. And I understand that Louisa's passing is something that many of you are feeling, not only personally, but really deeply because you advocate for the kind of change that we hope would have prevented the loss of her life. So that is a lot. And I know who cared about her to work with and process. And to kind of continue what Sean also introduced at the beginning, I just want to acknowledge that there may be an effect on folks that make it hard to engage in this conversation that we intend to have today about the successes of this group and how we can improve, but in the spaces that MPO operate. So please, as Sean said as well, please take whatever space you need and engage only as you feel ready to do so. But while sometimes the work we do is not enough, I do continue to feel that every place we can improve our governance, where we can increase accountability, and where we can shape the investment of the federal funds that the MPO stewards into projects that help improve lives, that matters to me. And so I hope we can still have a good conversation here and also still honor the experience that you all are having and Luis's tragedy. So with that, I will pivot into the conversation, the framework, the context that I had intended to have, which is just to remind us all that first and foremost, MPOs like the Boston Region MPO were established in the 70s because transportation dollars were being invested in ways that not only did not help, but actually deeply harmed the most vulnerable communities in our regions. So ever since, over the last 50 plus years, as MPOs, we are tasked to work with community partners, not only to think about, but also to work to reverse those impacts and build a better transportation system in the vision of our region's needs. So this remains a constant, regardless of the administration, as each new transportation reauthorization bill is passed. And I value that constant nature of the mission of the MPO. And while we work in a government framework, and no change can feel slow, but we do have so much work to do, and I am looking forward to continuing to work with you all to do it together. So in that context, I want to spend a few minutes talking about this group, the impact you have, and the way that we can kind of improve and magnify that impact. And to set the context for sort of my commitment to this work, some of you may already know, or you all may already know about my experience with the MPO and the Advisory Council, but I'd just like to reflect on that one quick moment to reinforce sort of the importance that I put in this group and the work that you do. Before this job as executive director of the MPO staff, I previously worked for the city of Cambridge, and I served on the former iteration of the Advisory Council for 4 years as the chair. And as such, as the chair, I sat in that voting seat on the MPO board that is now held by Transit Matters, Caitlin and Myra Carl. But after I became executive director of the staff in 2019, one of my top priorities for the agency was to expand and evolve how we carried out public engagement and our engagement and communications capacity. I couldn't quite believe before I started that we had as little capacity as we had to do such important work. We had one full-time engagement planner that was responsible for the public engagement plan. And there was so much work to do because the way that we engage with stakeholders in the region is at the core of the purpose of the MPO, again, to ensure that communities have a voice in how those federal dollars in a region are spent on transportation to better their lives. So to do that, one of my focuses in the first few years of my tenure was to start to shift from having a single program manager within a larger team to having a team with a manager dedicated to exploring and implementing best practices in engagement. So after the last 4.5 years, Sean's team was established. It grew to include 2 engagement focused planners, now Michaela and Gia. Also, we have a communications support through Megan, who's also here at the meeting I saw. But together, they've really transformed the MPO's engagement work. And a huge part of this was that a few years ago, Sean and his team argued that to better position the Advisory Council as an important arm of the MPO's engagement, it would need to evolve to look a little different than it had for the previous decades. That did mean sunsetting the prior iteration, which by the way, I have great respect for the folks who participated in that group. They did really excellent work under Len Diggins' leadership, but we realized we needed to launch a new structure with an application process, including compensation where possible for community-based organizations to make sure that people can participate, not only just because they have the time or it's part of their job to participate, but really because we really value your input and can have a meaningful impact through that engagement. So as a result, I feel that this Community Advisory Council I'm looking at today includes a diversity of perspectives that we do believe better or more deeply represents the needs of the communities that we are serving. Your role, it really is essential. I think it can be easy to lose sight of that sometimes in the day-to-day, but in our memorandum of understanding, our MOU, we established this group as an essential space for, I think Caitlin used some of the same phrasing for knowledge building, as a group that provides input into decision-making and helps hold the MPO accountable to the commitments and goals that we make as a board, as staff. So we are looking to this group to help ensure that those transportation investments are responsive to public priorities, again, as Caitlin mentioned. So well, I know there's work to do to improve. Let's celebrate what you've accomplished in the first year of this advisory council under Caitlin and Carl's leadership. I do want to say thank you very much to Caitlin and to Carl and to your supporting staff for the time and energy you've committed to launching and stabilizing this group, for working with us as staff really diligently to help us navigate with you how we approach these meetings, how we engage you all in a meaningful way. And I also want to thank you for representing the group's collective interest, where there is one, on the board, and actually through that process, really building credibility with the board. So it's been a lot of work. I really appreciate it. And it's been wonderful working with you. But together as a group, y'all have done a lot over the last year getting started in your roles. You've provided just a few examples. You provided support that we needed to help advance an essential but politically charged topic, which is research around roadway pricing. I feel the regional framework is the perfect one to use to research and analyze the different impacts that different strategies can have on our region, particularly from the lens of the people who it impacts. And it does require continued championing to ensure that more federal funds continue to be allocated to this work. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work with you on how to influence the direction of this next year's coming research and analysis work. As another example, several of you, Galen, Maha, Carl, gave very important specific recommendations that we were able to incorporate into our freight action plan around vulnerable roadway users. So this included made recommendations for training for freight vehicle operators, for vehicle design, and for routing of freight near schools. You all also provided extremely helpful input through a survey, which you also then further shared with your networks to help inform our regional active transportation plan gaps analysis. And as another example, you helped us understand the value of and incorporate youth engagement in our civic education program, which we call the Community Planning Lab. So those are just a few examples that represent really essential inputs that you've had. But again, as I mentioned, that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of work still to do. And I know from my own experience how much we need to work with you all to ensure that your time is spent meaningfully and that there's an impact. I also know from my perspective how complex and inaccessible the MPO work can continue to be. And my goal as the executive director is to just continue to demystify as well as increase engagement in the MPO work so that it truly is influenced by the people it's intended to serve, which is the 3+ million people in the 97 cities and towns in our region. So I'm very open to your input. What is working well and what isn't. There are lots of ways in which we can discuss respectfully utilizing your time to have impact. Y'all are aware that we have very distinct processes around developing federally required plans, a long-range plan with a vision, the capital investment plan where the dollars are invested in construction, and the annual work program where the federal dollars are invested in research and analysis, setting regional plans and the framework for how we also want to fund then construction. But we're also doing a lot of work around expanding the regional plans and frameworks we can use to ensure that those dollars are invested where they have the most impact. That includes our Regional Vision Zero work, our No Heat work, which was the development of a regional data set that gives us a fine-grained information in a very local way about how people walking, biking, and taking public transit feel heat. The development of the active transportation plan is ongoing. We've been working on a region-wide vulnerability assessment. As you know, we're developing a freight plan, and so much more really. So also, as you all know, we work with other agencies like MassDOT, the T, in cities and towns on individual projects that they might be funding. When they fund it, they're responsible for engagement, but we still can always and do try to bring the regional frameworks that we have developed with all these different lenses in terms of maximizing impact to any of the work that we do. So I'll just close out here. I say thank you for listening to me try to set the stage for how excited and enthusiastic we are to work with you, to really hear your input, whether it be what's working well or not, and just kind of emphasize that in our place as an MPO, we are always striving to take a data-driven approach to make sure that, again, those federal dollars that we steward, which are billions over a 5-year period, help improve your lives, our lives, and the communities we represent. So with that, I will pass it back to Michaela to facilitate a conversation, and I'm looking forward to any thoughts or ideas from all of you.
Thank you so much, Tegan. As we move into our discussion, so as Tegan mentioned, she'll be here throughout the discussion. So if you have questions for Tegan, you can also bring those up as we get into this discussion. But we have a couple questions, which Tegan already previewed, just to help guide our conversation. And just for a sense of time, we have about 30 minutes for this conversation. And then after our discussion, we're going to share a little bit more about some of the topics we have tentatively on the list to talk with you all about for the next year and get some additional feedback about those things. So with that in mind, I'm going to put a couple questions in the chat. So we'd love to hear your thoughts on the following 3 questions. The first being, what did you appreciate about the first year of the Advisory Council? What changes would you like to see in year 2 is our second question. And our third is, how do you hope to engage in the MPO's work over the next year? And really the goal for this is not that we do a highly structured or overly formal conversation where you have to speak to each of these points. It's meant to be a pretty broad-ranging conversation with you all. So with that, I will open it up for thoughts from you all. And I will ask, since I know we have members of the public here as well as our advisory council members, that we are going to prioritize hearing from the voices of advisory council members. But if you are a member of the public and you want to comment as well, you can raise your hand using the little Zoom hand function, and we'll try to incorporate your comments as well, while first prioritizing hearing from advisory council members. So with that, I will open it up, and for this discussion, feel free to raise your hand or come off mute and share your responses around these 3 questions.
I would just say it'd be wonderful to definitely to hear from folks. I know my experience over the last year has been that everyone on the MPO team is very open to feedback and to having an open conversation, and very much is committed to creating a council that serves the mission and the purpose, but is also works for the people who are on it, and respecting folks' time. And I think we would all very much welcome your feedback. And I know it's a difficult time and maybe a hard time to be sort of thinking through these questions, but definitely understanding what did you think worked? What would you like to have more of? Sort of those type of things to sort of help, I think, for the staff to be able to understand how we can improve the process. And I just want to say I really appreciated taking the feedback on sort of what you brought to the table in terms of the impact that the council was able to have on the decision making and process, and in particular those examples about safety. So I hope that folks can find some space to be able to share those, because I think it would be incredibly helpful for next year.
Thanks, Caitlin. And I want to just elevate a comment in chat. I'm going to try to make sure that anytime someone's sharing in chat, I'll also try to read it out so that anybody who can't as easily access the chat can see that. So Maureen says in the chat, as a local and regional nonprofit, it'd be helpful to have more direction on how we can share the advisory council's work with our communities and region. I think residents would like to learn more about the MPO. Thanks, Maureen. And then I see hands from Angie, and then from Jason. So,
Yeah, thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity to learn more about the process of the MPO and the work that it has been doing recently and how it just operates in general. That's been really helpful. I think I'll second that, both how we can share information and also how, as advisory committee members, we can be involved in at different points, what that type of involvement might look like. So a little bit more guidance on that could be useful for the future.
Thanks, Angie. Jason, I saw your hand next, and then we'll go to, and then I see Carl's hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I have found these meetings to be informative and engaging, except that my organization is one that has long engaged directly with the MPO and have generally had a very positive experience doing so. I've always found MPO staff to be responsive, to be willing to take the time to explain things, sometimes going to even greater lengths than I needed in explaining. the responses to questions that I asked. So having always found the MPO staff to be sort of react, to respond, to be open about their thinking and their processes. I wouldn't say the experience of being on this advisory committee has been eye-opening to me, just because again we've long had that good experience. I will say that I'm always, and this is maybe to lift up the comment in the chat, I'm always looking for better ways to communicate the importance of the MPOs to our stakeholders. We always talk excitedly about commenting on the tip process or trying to quantify the volume of transportation infrastructure investments that flows to the MPOs. And to a lot of folks who might be impacted by these decisions, it's just another piece of acronym soup. So I'm always interested in ways not so much to bring myself up to speed on your work, but to take your work and to better communicate it to external partners. So I feel like I'm not per se getting a ton out of this, and that's not to insult the process or say I don't want to be here. It's just I've always found the MPO to be open and engaging. I'm in search of how do I take this work and better speak about it to others.
Thanks, Jason. Tegan, I see your hand. Did you have a response to? Okay,
Yeah.
you help me.
Just to start to respond to those comments, because I don't want to just to kind of absorb them silently. I really appreciate that, and I think this is an ongoing struggle that MPOs face in general, and that we face in a variety of different ways. So another example of this is that we have sub-regional representatives on our board, and we ask those sub-regional representatives to bring back some of their understanding and awareness of the MPO, or help us support them in bringing it back to the sub-regions, which is a different approach than the particular community that you might serve as an organization. I know that Sean's team has been doing a lot of work over the years to think about making the way we talk about the work more plain language, more clear and fixed on the impact of the investments, rather than being quite so mired in the esoteric processes that people might struggle to wrap their heads around, understandably so. And also create different spaces for kind of education and learning through the community planning lab. So I think that maybe working with you all each a little bit more individually, as we have been with our sub-regional representatives, around what are the forums and spaces that you think there's the best opportunity for us to support you in bringing some of that work to the communities, and then we can work with you to see like what we can bring to the table to then support that, given that we could probably have tripled the size of the communications and engagement team without being able to accomplish, even a tenth of what we'd like to. But we're all resource constrained. So I welcome kind of some more nuanced conversations about your communities and ways in which we can work with you to bring that there. So it's not an answer yet, but just wanted to kind of absorb those comments. And Jason, I actually also really appreciate what you were saying, because some people have a lot of exposure to the MPO and some people don't. Your organizations all can have direct relationships with the MPO outside of the Community Advisory Council, and you should. If you're interested in influencing the process. Our hope is also that this creates a cohort of folks who are serving a diverse set of people in the region, and that there's some kind of value of also being together in this space to talk about these issues. And Jason, I will not put you on the spot to ask whether that's the case, but if any of you have encouragement or ideas about how to improve the kind of the cohort experience in building here, that's also something that would be interesting, since you can all participate individually if you want to.
Yeah, thank you, Tegan. And then I see Jason maybe having a direct response, and then Carl will go to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in addition to, I think, all of us needing to be continuously reflective of making sure that our own stakeholders are broadly reflective of the community. I think what sticks out, and you mentioned this, and I think of this is communications tools. It's because you have, in the work that you do, you have language and terminology that you have to use. That sometimes doesn't translate well to an audience that might really be impacted by some of these choices. And it's something that, we always try to summarize things in lay terms, and I struggle with it myself. So I think it's both who are we speaking to, but how are we speaking with them? So thank you for being cognizant of that.
Jason.
Yeah. So hi, it's Carl. Jason, you said exactly what I was gonna suggest, is like further tools or assistance to help with that translation piece. I think in my work with the Watershed Association, it's also kind of similar, around the questions of like climate resilience, right? Or like maybe like flood resilience, where it's not the most, it's if you ask somebody what their biggest urgent priority is, it's maybe not going to be the first thing that comes to mind. And so what's that call to action, as an organization that is really going to get people's attention and really spark people's involvement, right? Congestion, lost time, lost dollars, in people's pockets, right? What are those marketing or creative communication strategies that can be done to advance things? I think would be a really great change or opportunities to engage folks better and finding ways to translate those very technical terms into very, why is this important to me right now? Happy to be a partner in that process. I think just to plus one on kind of the opportunity over the past year to really use this past year as a way for everyone on the advisory council to get familiarized with MPO process, to demystify the process. That's probably the primary reason why I wanted to become involved, in addition to kind of lending our lens and perspective as an organization. So I really appreciate that. And then in terms of changes, I really like though the positive arc though in terms of level of kind of extracting our professional expertise and knowledge as members, as council members. I think the last conversation and breakout groups we had, which I think for the LRTP discussions was the first breakout groups that we had. And it's a really great opportunity to solicit just a wealth, many lifetimes experience worth of qualitative data that otherwise would be very difficult to extract. So I just want to encourage staff to continue to find ways to really extract our professional expertise and get that guidance. And then once you need to then turn around and translate that into your various planning processes or research activities, what is the like kind of, yes, we had that conversation kind of verbatim, but like, what is the concrete evidence or documentation that you need to say, oh, actually, like there was, like CLF was part of this like development review study, and analyzed this type of traffic input for this type of development. This would be really valuable to help justify why this is important for the MPO as a region. Similarly, Myra conducts a wealth of regional planning studies around greenways. Same thing I can imagine for the housing and disabilities and senior living agencies on the call here today. Like we do our own planning processes, we do our own research, and so anything that can be used to help justify what we're just saying verbatim during the meetings, like feel free to follow up. And I think the last thing I'll say too is like when there are like open public comment periods following up from these work, like when there's a draft LRTP to share, we're all really busy. And so we might not get to every public comment review and say, oh yeah, during that meeting in June, like I really noted on the importance of like technology advancements in transportation. Like I think actually, if there's an opportunity for MPO staff to be able to maybe help us to like reflect back on those meeting notes and say, oh yeah, Bike to the Sea had this really, really great idea. Maybe we can give them a little extra nudge and encourage them to make that comment, or do a more general output and saying, hey, this public comment period is going. We noticed that these type of organizations on the council were commenting in terms of this. If you wanted to supplement by submitting a public comment, now's the time. So like that extra nudge during public comment periods, if it helps to justify these discussions we're having, like we want to help make change. And I think just anything concrete we can do to help out with that is appreciated. But we need guidance and we need reminders because we're busy. All right, thank you.
Okay, I can defer to you first if you want to
No,
have anything.
no, thank you. That was really all super helpful feedback. And if you ever see me pause on getting to the unmute, it's just because I'm also taking detailed notes for myself. We'll have that captured in the minutes as well. We have the recording, but I also like to capture all the brilliant things you all are saying. So thank you for that, for all of these thoughts so far, and I'll pass it to you, Tegan, to respond.
Thanks, Carl. Those are extremely thoughtful. I would expect from you. You're always a very thoughtful person, but those are extremely thoughtful pieces of input. Just in the to action piece of what you said, totally agree. One of the things we're trying to do better is understand the message, like the audience and the message of the research and analysis more from the start of the process, because kind of historically we might have somebody very technical, like digging into a challenge or a problem or understanding an issue. But unless we're really thinking about the final message we want to convey and who we want to reach, that work has less impact. So we need to continue to do that better, and where we're falling short, listen to you, get some help from you on that, and vice versa. I also really appreciate you bringing up how much expertise you all bring to the table. One of the things I think about is that we're a bit of a large organization. We have roughly 60 full-time staff, and so we have our own sometimes compartmentalization of people doing work, and we need to make sure that we're constantly coordinating and communicating across those resources as an agency, as well as with our partners in the space like you. So I really appreciate that flag and that highlight. And then lastly, I think I had one more thing I wanted to say, but I will leave it there. But thank you. I took my own notes as well, and I think this is a really helpful insight.
Thanks, Megan. And I want to elevate a comment in the chat, which again, I will encourage people, feel free to continue to use the chat as a space to share. I just also try to make sure I'm reading these out so that anybody who's not looking at the chat can hear these comments as well. So Alexis says in the chat, I'd love more relationship building directly with MassDOT highway districts, especially the bicycle and pedestrian coordinators. I think Boston MPO covers districts 3 through 6. Thanks for sharing that, Alexis. And Alexis, if there's more you want to share verbally, feel free to obviously add on to that, but no pressure to do so.
Yeah, I mean, I have some meetings with these guys, but it's very hit and miss. We all have a really good relationship with Pete Sutton, but that's just one person, and I know MassDOT is like 4,000 staff. And I happen to know Highway District 2 coordinator, bike ped coordinator, but that's just because she happened to be a city engineer out here in Holyoke first, and I have only met some of the others through circumstance. And it feels like we should be working more tightly with them.
Alexis, we hear that not only from you all, but also from cities and towns who you might think, might have a more consistent relationship with. It really does seem like relational, like who you know, who you're friendly with, and it can vary wildly district by district. And I know that headquarters is also sort of aware of this dynamic. So we'd have to think about, what we can do in that space here, but just sort of acknowledging that issue. In the Boston region, because there are so many districts, the actual highway district folks rarely sort of participate directly in the MPO process at the board level, but some of our staff also have good connections to various people in the district offices, and we can flesh that out a little bit more and think about how we can continue to help build something that's a little more systematic than relational.
100%. Thank you.
I see it from Galen. Go ahead, Galen.
Cool. Thanks. I'll just play off Alexis's comment too. So you'll get a double mass bike here. Tegan, your last statement there about making it more structural and not necessarily just like project-wise makes me think of a couple things that maybe we could also have good build for in terms of DOT policies. So I'm very interested in what are the kind of the structural issues of what the department does in terms of engineering guidelines, strategic highway safety plan, all the stuff that impacts the realities of projects and the guidance of the DOT. So if there's a way that you are actually doing a really good job, frankly, of kind of as the MPO helping not have the tail wag the dog. And I don't mean that derisively, but like sometimes that happens in this process, as you're well familiar. And I think having us as a community advisory council is a great step towards that. So if there's a way in which there could be direct input towards some of the more structural ways the DOT operates, would be very helpful. So it's not just project by project, which I know we've seen big movements on. And there are some processes within the DOT that maybe you could be a more integrator of some of our input, like the Complete Streets team, which I think a lot of us are, that's a lot of where our work falls into. Or for instance, they have a meeting with the design exception review at the DOT, which is all the projects that can't meet Complete Streets. So not necessarily just the teams that can do things, but the teams that for some reason can't do things. Is there a way that you could help us build that bridge and we could have a little bit more of a holistic conversation? So it's not necessarily one side versus another side or this, this linear conversation, but a little bit more circular. I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe that's helpful. And similar framework, and I know it's not necessarily with the DOT's purview that you have, but if there's a way that we could work legislatively or similarly in the State House, are there certain things that we could help advise the MPO or vice versa? So that as advocates like MassBike, a lot of our work at the State House level, for instance, with vulnerable user language, truck safety language, things along those lines that sometimes require legislative push. The micromobility bill, for instance, is going to have a huge impact on how MPOs move forward on what we build and what we design if we're going to have a bunch of scooters and one wheels out there. So I think there is this ecosystem of structure that go beyond just how projects move forward or certain research projects or infrastructure projects move forward. And so I don't know what that looks like, but I like that you can bring us in perhaps with some influence and vice versa. We can bring you in with some influence too with some of the inroads that we have. And I'm sorry for being off video for that. I thought my video was on the whole time. So apologies.
No worries. No need to apologize. Totally welcome people being off video as needed. So no worries. And thanks for all that feedback, both Alexis and Galen. Really appreciate it. Seth, I see your hand.
Yeah, thanks. I will start by saying I'll say for Paulina, who said that she couldn't make it today, a big thank you for everything in the last year. Paulina and I work closely together, and I know that she would just want to extend some gratitude in this year one reflection for this space, this group, and may have more to say when she's back next month. I will build off a little bit of what Alexis and Galen just started. I've been mulling over really how to put it. I think that on a work over the next year, this element of figuring out ways to have yeah, I'm sorry. Apologies. Please excuse a little bit of draft speaking as I try to rein it in towards more concrete things. But this DOT and MPO dynamic, I think a lot about disconnects between various plans that we have, be that Vision Zero, Beyond Mobility, climate plans, and the disconnects with the actual budgets. And I think that a lot of time these budgets can give a mention to one of those plans. Beyond Mobility, or more so Vision Zero and our climate plan, have a mention in MassDOT's most recent capital investment plan and the STIP, but there's not really, in our view, as solid of a link between how our dollars are moving us towards those goals or not. I think that we may have a stance that there's not moving us as closer as they could be, but I would love to have an ongoing conversation, whether it's this venue or a different one, about how examining our methodology, examining whether just looking at the STIP most recently, in the greenhouse gas emissions impact pieces, it's zeros down the board on what GHG impacts are from highway investments, and that's largely because we assume no impact because there's no change in use or capacity. But the problem with other plans, such as Vision Zero and the other plans, freight and safety, is that business as usual is increasing emissions, is meaning no decrease in fatalities on our streets. And so I would love to see what tool methodology can play in really examining those impacts from a dollar standpoint, because I think that we really think that our dollars could be doing a lot more to move these plans, not just in a theoretical way or in a way to market on paper, but in real day-to-day impacts. And also potentially provide a way to demonstrate some concrete projects that are occurring. I'm fully aware of various federal programs, and because we are not below a certain threshold of fatalities, a lot of money comes from federal programs and is directed towards vulnerable user projects, but it's hard to find at a granular level, like what projects are actually undergoing out in the communities around Massachusetts to actually advance that. And if there's a way that we can better communicate that those projects are underway, I think that would be amazing. And that drifts a little back to the community piece or the ability to communicate piece. So I've been thinking a lot about that and the ways that our budget processes, our methodology assessments can better advance these plans that the budgets hearken to. Lastly, I'll just plus one everything that was on the docket about um, increasing communication. CLF is not the same kind of membership structure as so many of our other partners. We're a bit further at a distance, but time and time again, I think we see the downstream impacts of what better communication could solve, and that comes to community members calling in or showing up to the board meetings of MassDOT or another entity asking for a project that sounds great, has a bunch of support, but this is like the approval, this is the fait accompli stage. And I think that being able to integrate people much, 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 much sooner in the processes that Jason was talking about a while ago would really be a huge advancement. And again, recognizing CLF's a bit of a distance there. But as always, we're happy to offer any support that we can, both in the planning on that and the actual execution of communicating better with our partners in their network. So thanks, y'all.
Thank you, Seth. Appreciate all those comments. Jesse, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'll just, being a little bit more sort of general, definitely as someone who comes this very much not as a transportation planning or policy person, but being very much in a parallel space. It's been a great opportunity over the last year to learn a lot more, really like crash course in like how regional transportation planning works, really what the MPO actually is, and to begin thinking about some of the intersection to other issues that transportation planning is connected to, like housing, which is the one I spend my life thinking about. Um, you know, yeah, I have less language for like the transportation planning advocacy world, et cetera, than others on the call. I'm not always sure how useful sort of my input is. It's been helpful when, for me, I know some of the conversation around like the discrete studies, and there was things touching like transit-oriented development and impact on parking, and sort of being pinged by MPO staff to be like, this is something that's on the agenda that sounds like you might be interested in, be helpful to have you weigh in. That sort of prompting is helpful because, again, this is a relatively new world, new space for me. And it's not always clear how some of the very technical side of it sort of fits with the stuff that I think of on a daily basis and sort of housing policy and politics. But I hope that my presence here has been useful. I know I'm not the only one who isn't day to day in the transportation space. But yeah, maybe a little bit continued sort of pinging of, oh, this is something relevant, or we'd really love a housing perspective on this or that, whatever it may be. That would be helpful. Also, just on like a logistical thing, I mean, it's certainly helpful to have virtual meetings. I know that's like the world we're in now. But also I know it was like a great opportunity. It was great to like meet some of the MPO staff in person at a bar foundation event recently, as well as run and catch up with some other members of the community advisory council. But I'm always open to like some in-person opportunity. I think being here as much for me is as much about trying to give a housing perspective to all this as like build relationships again in an intersecting policy world. And I sometimes find it harder to do in the virtual space. I know we're not going to like do everything in person again. That's just not the world we live in. But I am one who likes that kind of thing. And I know I think like an MPO board meeting we were invited to attend in person. I think the timing unfortunately didn't work for me. But just I'm always open to more in-person relational building opportunities. As it makes sense. So I'll just leave it there.
Thanks for those thoughts, Jesse. And I will say, it's like you read our minds because we actually have an August in-person gathering plan that we're going to be talking about in a few more minutes. But Tegan, I will pass it to you to comment next, and I will just also name that we have about 3 more minutes left in this portion. So I'll pass it to Tegan, and then we probably have time for one more comment.
Okay, thanks, Michaela. So much was said in that last several comments, so I will only try to highlight a couple of things that I think are interesting and relevant. Again, totally on point, all of you, and so much more work to do together. I'll also highlight that there will be an annual meeting coming up in November for the board as a whole, so you all can also consider that an opportunity to meet in person and also meet the other person in person. Even though it would be Caitlin or Carl sitting at the table. As far as Jesse about housing, the connection between land use and housing and transportation is something that's essential and something that the feds have actually required us to do better at and look into. And so thank you for offering to help with that intersection. We're starting to explore how we can build in that kind of expertise into our planning stage of work, as well as whether there's an opportunity to come up with in a longer term kind of a more integrated plan that helps us understand the connections and impacts of the different areas on each other. So lots more to come there. I also really appreciate bringing up about policies and how to implement good policies. I think it is a really good partnership. As staff to the MPO, our MPO policy board is chaired by MassDOT, and I think that's something to actually remember. In a lot of other states, the DOT is not even at the table or on the board. Boards just sort of coordinate with them, but in our case, we have them front and center in that space. And so that's it. It has, pros and cons in any MPO governance structure, but they are genuinely at the table, and so something for everyone to keep in mind. And then also as MPO staff, we are primarily federally funded, so we are not allowed to enter into the lobbying space, but we can advocate and educate based on the framework that our plans and our analysis set out as to what the priorities should be. And we can educate and advocate around what the board establishes as their priorities for the transportation vision. So there's a really healthy partnership with different organizations that operate different ways. And I like finding those nexus points. The last thing I just wanted to add into it is that, someone was talking about the plans actually having an impact and measuring that impact. We are also starting to try to do better with that. There's lots of performance measures that we are required to use with the feds, but that don't necessarily connect us directly with our goals. And so we are starting with this long range plan to start to build in the metrics that we can start to assess year over year to show, are we reaching our Vision Zero goals? Are we reaching our resilience goals? So we're starting down a pathway, I think, of making more progress in that space, but love to continue talking with you all about it. And I'm sorry if I took up too much time, because I welcome any more comments.
Thank you, Tegan. Is there anybody who didn't get a chance to share their comments or thoughts yet who wants to share a final thought? Okay, I'm not seeing any. I want to remind you all, this is meant to be sort of an ongoing conversation. We really, really appreciate all of the thoughts and feedback that you all have shared today, and we will certainly take that all into account as we begin to dive more fully into planning for the next year of this council, and we'll make sure, to Tegan's point, that this information gets shared back across relevant teams within our agency. So super appreciate all the feedback that you all shared. I want to remind you all that this is the beginning of a conversation rather than the end of one, and so you can also share additional thoughts after this meeting. You can always reach out to me and the rest of our team via email or schedule time to talk more. But we are now going to shift a little bit more concretely into thinking about what's next for our next several meetings and giving a little bit of an overview of topics that we imagine the advisory council will have input on in the next year. So with that, Megan, if you don't mind pulling back up our slides, and we're gonna dive back into talking about what's next, starting actually with what I teased in response to Jesse's comment about our in-person event we're gonna be doing in August. Thank you, Megan. Okay, we'll go to the next slide. Sorry, next slide again. I forgot how many slides we have that give the title overviews. Thank you, Megan. Okay, so I want to quickly mention in August, so typically this is something that is sort of a tradition within MPO world, building on the previous version of the advisory council that Tegan mentioned earlier, which is that we typically like to try to have an in-person sort of field trip of sorts for the council once a year. And so we'll be doing that coming up in August. Rather than having our formal traditional meeting like the one we're doing here, we will be having an August social event where we'll be looking at some MPO funded projects around Malden Center. And that's going to be Tuesday, August 4th from roughly 3:30 to 6. More details to come via email about that. But we're excited to provide an opportunity for you all to connect in person and to view some projects on the docket that are MPO funded. And so more information about that to come. And then, and that will again replace our formal August meeting. And then our next formal advisory council meeting will be in September. And for that meeting, we are going to be talking more about roadway pricing. And then next, to what Tegan mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about the scoping for the next roadway pricing study. The team who's leading that work is excited to come and talk with you all and share a little bit of where they're thinking they'll go and get a lot of input. And they're explicitly incorporating some of the feedback that they've already gotten from you all from previous roadway pricing discussions, but are looking forward to having a deeper discussion about the next round of that. And we also, to the point that Tegan was just mentioning about the metrics that we use for evaluation in the long range plan, we will have Erin, who you met at last month's meeting, and another colleague from our staff who work on the metrics side of things for the long range plan, coming back to talk a little bit about the metrics that they're looking at for the long range plan. So that's what we have on tap for September. And then I want to pause here to create space for Caitlin to share an announcement that will also be impacting a bit of our September content.
Oops, thank you so much. One second. Thank you. So I am sad, but also excited to let folks know here that I will be stepping down as Executive Director of Transit Matters at the end of September, and therefore, as chair of this council, I will be relocating to London. So it's for personal reasons to accompany my partner whose job was transferred there. So it's really truly been a pleasure and an honor to be service chair as this council, and I myself have really truly valued the experience and appreciated the staff and my vice chair and all the work we've done here. So obviously this will impact the governance of the council going forward, but just wanted to let people know that that will be taking place, and I will be leaving at the end of September. So this will be taking place in the fall. So thank you, Michaela, for giving me that time and space.
Yeah, thank you, Caitlin. And I know that I speak for all of our team when I say we will really miss working with you, and we deeply, deeply appreciate all the work that you have done as the chair and all of your work at Transit Matters. And so I appreciate you letting us put you on the spot so that we could say how much we'll miss working with you and to share this news. So we will be celebrating September as going to be Caitlin's last meeting as chair, and then we'll be transitioning to a new chair in October. And so Caitlin's transition means that we will be doing some elections in September. We'll be sharing more information about all of that with you all in advance of the September meeting. But since this is our last formal meeting prior to that September meeting, we wanted to make sure to share that news with you all at this point. So thank you, Caitlin. And I know we are hoping that we will see most of you at our August event, so we can also celebrate you a bit and your leadership as you transition during that August event. So thank you so much for all that you've done.
And thank you. And just to be clear, which I should have said, Transit Matters will definitely continue to be part of this council, just not in a leadership role. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Caitlin. All right, so that will be a sad moment in our September meeting. We'll be acknowledging Caitlin stepping down from the chair role and celebrating her leadership as we do that transition. So we've got quite a full September meeting. So we'll be doing roadway pricing, some elections, and also talking about performance metrics as it relates to the LRTP. And then in just a moment, I'm going to share a slide that gives a little bit more of an overview of different topics that we think will make sense for different meetings over the course of the next federal fiscal year. But before I do that, I also want to mention that we have a couple ongoing engagement opportunities where, very much tied into some of the comments that you all have made in this discussion, we're trying to make it easy for you all to participate and to share out information with your communities about those different opportunities. So with that, I will turn us to the next slide to talk a little bit more about an overview of topics for the federal fiscal year. So Looking ahead, I know this is there's a lot of content on this chart, but these are some of the topics that we think will be ones where there's opportunities for the Advisory Council to have input over the coming federal fiscal year. And so I am going to quickly walk through these, and then if there's comments, questions you all have, we want to make space for those. And this is not meant to be exhaustive or binding. So this is a draft that then we will get further refined based on all the comments that you all have made today and based on feedback from you all. So with that, I already mentioned we've got so we had as you'll see here, we've got long range planning as something that's sort of in the ongoing, but we had some near-term engagement opportunities for that with the scenario planning work that we just did that workshop at our last advisory council meeting. And then we'll have the performance measures piece coming in our September meeting. And then we are envisioning talking more about investment programs in the winter to spring. And then shifting into a different bucket of programming. So our capital programming, this gets into our tip work. We're going to be, to Tegan's point, there's going to be work going on around criteria and things for that. And we envision that taking place in the winter and summer of 2027. And then getting into our regional plans. As we mentioned, we've got the roadway pricing work. We're going to be revisiting that with you all in the September meeting. And then we are going to also be talking with you all about the next phase of the active transportation planning work. That's that regional transportation plan that Tegan mentioned. As you all may remember, we're currently still collecting those survey responses to the survey that many of you have helpfully shared to get additional responses around the needs and gaps in our regional active transportation network. And then coming up in October, our program manager who leads our Communications Transportation Access Program will be talking about the coordinated plan and accessibility. That's something that we have currently slated for October to get some feedback about that, which I know many of you have given very valuable feedback through focus groups and other engagements for that coordinated plan, but we hope to revisit that topic with the full advisory council in October. And then also are planning to engage around municipal vulnerability work and Vision Zero work in the winter and onward. And then, as Tegan mentioned, we have sort of continued to think about ways to incorporate the advisory council into the overall work planning. And so that's sort of an ongoing process that your comments today will certainly help us to think about as well. And then on our next slides, I'll talk in just a minute about the two final things listed here, which are the certification review and the public engagement plan, which are ways to give input into our public engagement processes for the public engagement plan. And the certification review is sort of an overall view of our work as a whole. So before we pivot to talking more about the I cued us too soon. Thank you, Megan. So before we go into the certification review more fully in the public engagement plan, any questions about any of these or Tegan or other team members, anything you want to add on this slide? And I see your request for this slide. Yes, so we can send out this slide as part of the meeting follow-up. We can certainly make that happen. All right, not seeing any questions or additional comments. We're going to go on to the next slide then and talk a little bit about the certification review and the public engagement plan. So our public engagement plan, public review period, you all may remember from June, we were talking about this plan being out for review. We are, much like we did for the TIP and UPWP, we are planning to prepare some template materials and some social media materials to share with you all to hopefully make it easy for community members and for your organizations, should you wish to provide input during this public comment period. So look out for that via email. And then we also have, go to the next slide, we also have an upcoming certification review. This is something that is an exciting opportunity to kind of look at all of our work holistically and get feedback from federal partners and from local partners. And this happens every 4 years. It's conducted by the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration. In addition to being an exciting opportunity, it is also something that is required for us to do in order to receive funding for federal planning and capital funds. And we anticipate having 2 public meetings that we would love your help in spreading the word about, likely one in August and one in September. Again, look out for more details from us on that. Any questions or comments at this point about any of the the updates or things to come that I've shared. But yeah, Tegan, please jump in.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that the CERT review, while it again might seem like one of these kind of esoteric processes, it's actually really essential in terms of accountability and leveraging our accountability to our federal partners in a way that helps us motivate and provide like political will behind change. And so even though it like high level and distant, if there are things that you are interested in shifting around the way that the MPOs work, where we work with our partners, this is an important space to think about. It is actually very important to our federal partners that we were asked to make sure that we emphasize this opportunity with you all and to see if you want to engage with it, because they, like we, take very seriously the role of this group in representing the broader kind of voices in the community and having a voting seat on the board. And so they asked that we highlight these upcoming opportunities and encourage you all to come with ideas, thoughts about improvements and the way the MPO works.
Steven, any other questions or comments about any of the content that I've shared around what's coming up in the year ahead?
I would just say that the slide and the overview is very, very helpful, I think, from a planning perspective and for members of the council. So thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. All right, at this point, I'm going to shift us into our thank you, Seth. So Seth commented in the chat about the certification review being an opportunity to use the esoteric to advance the esoterific outcomes. Appreciate the pun there, Seth. Thank you for those thoughts. Okay. At this point, I will. Oh yeah, Caitlin.
Might I add just one thing, which is as your planning moves forward, I think to the point I think I heard at least one or two people say during the comment period of potentially adding to that slide of planning the points at which people's comments or people's will be able to make contributions and inflection points where it'll be helpful to be able to collect sort of the opinions of the group so they can filter back or circle back into that process. If that made any sense, I hope it did.
No, that did. That's helpful feedback. Thank you, Caitlin. All right. At this point in our meeting, I'm going to move us into our next piece, which is that we are continuing our advisory council member information sharing, and I'm excited to invite Angie from PRC to share about their work.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. Is it okay if I share maybe a slide or two? I just have a few.
Yes, you should be able to slide share now. Yes, thank you, Megan. Now that Megan stopped sharing ours, you should be perfect. Thank you. Okay. Just gave you permissions. You should be.
Thanks. Are you able to see a slide?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. So thanks for the opportunity, and I really value being part of this work. I am the center director at the Prevention Research Center on Nutrition and Physical Activity at the Harvard Chan School of Public Health, which is a long title. We usually go by the PRC or the HPRC. I'm excited to be able to share a little bit about what we do and maybe some resources that might be helpful to organizations that are a member of the council. Our mission is really to work with community partners to develop, implement, and evaluate and disseminate cost-effective and evidence-based policies and programs. And I personally feel that transportation funding and planning and implementation is a big, probably one of the biggest sources of public health infrastructure funding that we have available to us. So that is my reason for being interested in this council and the work that happens at the MPO and in all of your organizations. Our focus is really healthy eating and active living. So we have projects that focus on both. Our partners are often public health agencies at the state, county, and city levels. We also work primarily with education, either at the state level or at the local level with education agencies, because our focus is on kids and their families. We also work with community organizations and healthcare organizations and other partners that provide services or support children and their families. And so that's a big part of the work that we do. We provide resources, tools, curricula, professional development opportunities, and we really seek to increase capacity for partners to engage in evaluation research at the local level. We're one of 20 centers that are funded by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. As a network, we are one of the just a couple of the centers focus on active living or healthy eating as well. So just to give a little framework. As I mentioned, healthy eating, active living. We also focus on marketing and drinking water and sugary drink reduction. So those are some of the areas. We do a lot of work with local health agencies to focus on economic evaluation, and we're really interested in trying to expand the widespread use of cost-effective and effective policies, programs, and practices that will improve the lives of kids and their families. A few initiatives that I wanted to highlight for this group. In addition to some of the core research that we do, right now we're focused on our early care and education settings. So we've been working a lot with local health agencies and others that provide professional development and strategies to expand opportunities for kids and providers to focus on evidence-based practices that can improve health and promote healthy development of our youngest Massachusetts residents. We also do some training. We provide an opportunity for local organizations to participate in a training program, which is collaboration between our school, the Harvard Chan School of Public Health, and our PRC to build capacity of community partners, providing an introduction to community-based participatory research, program planning, and evaluation. And I'll put some links in the chat as well. We have a new cohort that will be starting in the fall. So that'll be an opportunity for any community organization members that might be interested in such a program to apply to participate in that. We also have a project called Choices, which I'll also include a link in the chat for you, but has a variety of resources that look at cost effectiveness of different strategies that communities can use to improve healthy eating and active living. And we also participate in a couple of key research networks at the national level. Probably the one that's of most interest to this group is the Physical Activity Policy Research and Evaluation Network. They provide monthly networking opportunities and presentations that are on focus related to physical activity and policy, a lot of which has to do with transportation policy as well. So just want to thank you. This is my contact info. I'll include some links in the chat, but you can also reach me or follow up with any questions as well.
Thank you, Angie. We have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions if anyone has any questions for Angie. And as always, the links that Angie you share in the chat, I'll include in our follow-up email as well, people. But any questions for Angie?
I'll chime in if I can. And just really cool. I'm curious if there's ways that we can plug in. Are there any studies that we could help out with? We've been seeing a lot with our e-bike and micromobility stuff, a lot of data coming out on the uptick in new types of needs for collecting data that haven't actually been tracked before, for instance. And so one of the things we're working on at MassBike is how are we going to update crash reports to better inform your work, et cetera. So I'm just kind of want to throw out there that I think could be a good, opportunity to tap us to see what your needs might be, and that'll help influence how we go forward with our work.
Great, thanks. Thanks so much for that question. I think this is the topic that's been of interest both broadly in Massachusetts and amongst other partners. So it'd be great for us, not as necessarily micromobility or transportation experts, to be able to reach out and engage with all of you. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate this opportunity of this group that we have, this cohort, to provide those key points of contact and insight and expertise. So thanks, Galen. I would look forward to reaching out with you. I don't have any specific asks at this point, but appreciate the opportunity to call upon you as the questions come up and we need more expert advice or guidance. So thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, if there's additional questions, feel free to reach out via email. You all should have each other's contact information from the reminder emails I send out, but also always feel free to reach out to me if you're having trouble tracing back those emails and finding each other's emails. I'm happy to kind of connect you all as is helpful around these things. So thank you so much, Angie. Really appreciated learning more about the work that you and your team do. And thanks for that question, Galen. And at this point in the meeting, we are going to open it up for our members' items. So if you have any upcoming events or projects that you want to share with the rest of the council, I open it up for you all to share those things. And I see a hand from Jesse. So Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Michaela. I wanted to just let folks know, particularly for the organizations represented here, that who have territory that includes the city of Boston proper, that we're actually doing some work with the city council. There's a proposed text amendment to increase the flexibility of new parking that's required to be built for new housing developments in the city, tending to be smaller, projects under 50,000 square feet. We have arbitrary parking ratios that are very outdated, that actually result in more traffic, more paved surfaces, and then also increase the cost of building homes that we desperately need in the city. And so there is a zoning text amendment working its way through the city council right now that will hopefully be approved by the council and sent to the city zoning commission, and then ultimately onto the mayor. If organizations in the community advisory council are interested in hearing more about that or supporting our efforts around that reform, love to find some support. We're trying to build a strong coalition of organizations in different topic areas to get into some of that intersecting issue that I was talking about a few minutes ago. But just sort of wanted to put out there without getting like sort of too political or in the weeds right now. If you're interested in parking flexibility and parking reform in the city of Boston, would love to talk with you and see if it makes sense to partner anyway. So please reach out to me.
Thanks, Jesse. Any other projects, events that members want to highlight? Yeah.
Just to kind of bookmark this with the somber, we are hosting a vigil for Louisa on Thursday at City Hall Plaza. It's the flyer is just being announced on Louisville Streets and Mass Bikes and a few others from the Vision Zero Coalition's Instagram post as of like 3 minutes ago. So I just want to let you all be aware that we're going to host this at City Hall Plaza. Everyone is invited. It's going to be 5:30 gathering and speaking at 6. It's going to be more formal. We're going to expect some elected officials who might be able to come to the mic and say some words of action. But it's also going to be kind of an advocate-led kind of a collab with the Vision Zero Coalition. So I think it would be great if folks on this could help spread the word to your networks, and hopefully we can get a good turnout on City Hall Plaza on Thursday. And that's Boston City Hall.
Thank you, Galen. Appreciate you sharing that, and appreciate all the work that you and the Vision Zero partners are doing on that. Thank you. Yeah,
Great.
Carl.
Yeah, thank you, Galen. And in less important news, I wanted to share that we will be having a bike ride Mystic River Watershed Association will be having a bike ride later this month in collaboration with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, looking at the hundreds of millions of dollars worth of transportation, shared use path, roadway corridor reconstruction projects going on in just a few small square miles in the lower Mystic geography. So if you're interested in coming out then, it is July 20. Oh geez, sorry, I just got back from vacation today. Wednesday, July 29th. I will drop a link in the chat before we all sign off here today with an event link in our calendar. So thank you so much. And if you're interested in coming out and maybe a prelude to our get together all together in August in Malden, you are invited.
Carl. Any other member items that anyone wants to share? All right, seeing none, can I get I think that oh, thank you for sharing that link, Carl. I think that is the end of our formal meeting content for today. So can I get a motion to adjourn our meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Jason. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Carl. So with that, that concludes our July meeting. Thank you all so much for being here. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing you all at our in-person field trip in August and seeing you all again in this space back in September. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.